This is TVMayho here, and today we're going to talk about The Handmaid's Tale. The first 3 episodes were released April 26, 2017. This show is based on a novel by Margaret Atwood. So just to give you guys a little reminder, I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of the show. If you guys haven't watched this show yet, and then come back and discuss with me. I'm going to give you guys a little brief overview, and then it's basically going to be spoilers after that. Overview of this show is that it's based on the future of the United States, where it's a totalitarianism society, which is basically where women cannot work or have money of their own. It's all through their husbands. So the main character, which is Offred, aka June, which was her name before the society was put into place, we see it through the eyes of her. She is a handmaid, and there's Martha's, there's Under His Eye, which I think of it as like the government, and she's just basically trying to survive as a handmaid so that she can go back out and find her daughter, which was taken from her. I just want to reiterate again that this next part will have spoilers, so if you haven't went to go watch this Hulu original, go watch it and come back. So the first episode is called Offred. We see through her eyes the main lives of a handmaid. So the show starts off where her husband and her child are driving in a car. The car spins off the road. His name's Luke. Luke tells her to go run into the woods like a mile and a half to get to the other side of the countryside, to where this society has not been put into place. But of course she can hear his eye, or the government, and she picks her up, and then she hears a gunshot. Obviously at this point we figure that Luke has been shot and killed, and the government is chasing after them in the woods, and they finally catch up to her, take the little girl away from her, and June is pulled into this handmaid's society. June, or Offred, is one of the fertile handmaids, so obviously her job consists of what women were told to do in the traditional values, which is bear children, go grocery shopping, go to specific handmade ceremonies. And there are different kinds of women jobs in this show. You have the handmaids, which is the base one, but there's also the Marthas, who cook and prepare the meals for the rich family. And basically June's family is the Waterfords, where the commander, Mr. Waterford, has some kind of power. He conducts meetings and that sort of thing, and Miss Waterford, obviously she's kind of jealous of June because she is the barren wife. She can't give her husband children, which I'm sure is a sad thing for a lot of people. We're kind of introduced to the handmaids' life and how they kind of became handmaids. We meet Maura, Janine, and obviously her, and we see how they first became handmaids. Now Maura, she knew outside before the society was put into place, so we kind of see that as well. We see how the women are disciplined for talking back. Janine talks back to Aunt Lydia, and she gets her eye removed, which is kind of scary because, you know, but I get it too that in this government they have to lay down the laws, so these women are, you know, for say, put in a check. Have a ceremony toward the end of this episode where a guy has raped a handmaid, and at this point Janine, or her society name is Warren, has told Offred that Maura is dead because she got sent to the colonies. And from what I can tell, the colonies are kind of like the jail or like the hell part. So of course she's filled with rage because that's her friend. They had goals of completing the society and going out to help June find her daughter. So At one point, Aunt Lydia leads the guy down, and you can see the aggression in June's face. She beats, basically the crap out of this guy until he's dead. And to me, it kind of makes me wonder, like, what is going on with these people? I can understand that she's mad that her friend may or may not be dead, and this is the only place where she can really release that kind of aggression, because everywhere else she has to have man. In society, when they go grocery shopping, they are given a companion, another handmaid from a different household, to where they can go grocery shopping with. I think it's kind of to keep them in line and not like veer off and maybe run away or something. Even though under his eye is everywhere in like these little military vehicles and whatnot. But Offglen, as some of you may or may not know, she is Alexis Bledel. I'm sorry if I butchered her name, but she is a character of Gilmore Girls, which is another show I've watched and I really enjoyed. She seems like a very well put together character in this show. She gains, in my opinion, Offred's trust from the very beginning. They kind of talk about before the society, their lives, and that sort of thing. And then after their walk to and from the grocery store, Offglen tells her that there's an under his eye spy in the house, which obviously it builds concern, because then it's like, who can you trust, especially in that house? From what I've seen, there's only the Martha, the driver Nick, the commander, and the wife. So it's a very small amount of people. So it's kind of scary to think about what's going to happen in the coming episodes. Okay, so for episode 2, it's called Birthday. So in this episode, we find out that Offglen has a new network for the handmaids. She wants Offred to join so that they can get information about the commanders and under his eye and find a way out so they don't have to be a part of this anymore. But for the real reason why it's called Birthday, Janine, or Off Warren, is having a baby. So all the handmaids are going to the house that she lives in. The wife of that house is named Naomi. So when they get there, she is on the first floor doing like breathing exercises. And at first I didn't understand, because I'm like, why is she doing a breathing exercise and she's not even having a child? But as I watched the episode, I figured out that these wives are there to have it simulate like they are the person having sex with their husband or giving birth to a child, kind of trying to take out the handmaid's position. So upstairs, Janine, or Off Warren, is in the bed actually going through these pains. All the midwives are surrounding her, telling her to either exhale or breathe, kind of trying like to coach her through it. And Offred has flashbacks of her own birth, where we see that, they had to fight their way kind of into the hospital, and once they had the baby, Fred's daughter was the only baby in the maternity ward. The nurse tells her all the other babies had died or were sent to the ICU, so that was kind of sad. I'm pretty sure it made June worry about her own child's time for like surviving. And then she wakes up from a nap and her baby's gone, and it turns out some random lady ends up stealing her baby, and she tries to chase her down. And I think what happened here is her baby ended up dying at that same hospital, and June's baby looked similar to hers, so she just decided to take her, which was I'm pretty sure it was really scary. I wouldn't want my baby to get stolen from me inside the hospital. Or they go to Naomi's house or Janine's place of residence, where she assists the wife and her commander. Nick, the driver, tells June, or Off Warren, that her commander wants to see her. It makes her worried, she makes a comment saying that there are two-legged wombs. They're not really concubines, which I thought was funny because it's like, in a sense, when you first read the title that, you know, they're fertile handmaids, you would think of it as a kind of concubine thing, but because they're going back to the total natural values where women don't really have any like control or position, she makes a good point. So of course that makes her worried, because for a handmaid to be with a commander in private without the wife there is against the rules. So she gets kind of scared. She thinks that the commander knows about her trying to join the network with Offglen. So she starts panicking. So as Janine gets closer to having the baby, the actual wife comes upstairs and stands behind her and goes through the exercises and the pushing and all that kind of stuff until she actually has the baby. And this is where I became sad for Janine, because I think of it exactly how they said, as a surrogate moment. And to me, when she literally like popped the baby out and then the wife got in the bed like it was actually like she actually gave birth, I thought that was messed up, because to me I didn't think that Janine was going to see the baby again. She didn't even get to name it. So when all the midwives started hugging her, when she started crying, you know, I kind of felt for her, because I think it's sad. I would think it would suck to be a surrogate and go through all the emotions of carrying the baby, having the baby, and then just have to let it go. I know a lot of people do it all the time, but for me personally, I don't know if I would be able to do it. So when she comes back to the house after Janine has the baby, then she has to go meet with the commander. She goes meet with the commander. She washes up. As part of the ceremony, she has to clean before she meets with the commander. So she goes meet with him, and surprisingly, they just play Scrabble. I don't know why they played Scrabble. Maybe he was testing her intelligence, but she did end up winning in Scrabble. And I thought it was kind of funny because he starts talking about like rematches and having a date when he comes back from Washington and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it was weird because, you know, he's not supposed to do that. So I don't know if she's starting to like him more, if he's starting to like her more than a handmaid. And as she leaves to go back to her own room, he gives her a handshake, which I kind of understand because, you know, they're not supposed to have any real physical contact. But then she goes back to her room and she starts laughing. That's where I get lost, because I figure either she's laughing because of the handshake or because he was kind of acting like all flirty about like the date and when he comes back from Washington and that sort of thing. So I'm wondering where that goes in further episodes. But after that night completes, she goes out like she's gonna go shopping regularly, and she's about to tell Offglen about how the commander is going to Washington, so hopefully that would help her with the network of handmaids. And lo and behold, when she opens the gate, that is not Offglen. It's some random chick we ain't never seen before. So it's like, what happened to Offglen? And episode 3 is called Late. The reason why it's called Late is because Offred, her period is late. So Miss Waterford automatically assumes that she's pregnant. Now what I think happens is, you know, like sometimes when women get stressed, their period sometimes comes later than it does normally, because she's having the stress about, you know, worrying about her friend being dead, you know, the commander, worrying about Janine and all these other things. Miss Winifred starts to treat her differently, because as we see in this episode, when you have the child for the family, they're kind of like grateful for you, so you're treated differently after the child. So Miss Winifred lets Offred go to the Naomi's house to see Angela, which is Janine's baby, and visit them. So they go, Offred holds the baby. Naomi's worried that Offred's gonna get like attached and expect special privileges, but Waterford isn't worried about that because she's trying to get Offred, comfortable and hoping that she is actually pregnant. So she goes to visit, Offred goes to visit Janine upstairs because she's kind of worried about her. So she asks her how she's doing. She says she's doing fine. But then she starts talking about Charlotte. And at that point, I know some people were like, who's Charlotte? Charlotte, as we know, she renamed the baby she had for Naomi as Charlotte. And she told Offred that she felt that her and the commander and the baby were all going to run away together. And I felt bad for her because, in this totalitarian society, that's not really realistic for what's going to happen. I felt bad for her because, it's not really going to happen. And it's almost like, she was being delusional because of all the changes. And what turned out to happen was Miss Winifred had asked Naomi about this bite on her hand. And as Naomi was explaining it, she was saying the baby bit her, which didn't make any sense. Which I know the baby was just born, and the baby's not going to be deciding to bite people's hands. So I feel this was the reason Offred went to go even see Janine, was because she knew Janine bit Naomi. And she told her that, you can't be doing that. Because, she's afraid she's going to get punished. But Janine lets her know, like, she can do whatever she wants. Because she's just had the baby, and she has to be protected now at this point because she's breastfeeding the baby and keeping the baby healthy. So Janine talks about how she can get vanilla ice cream now whenever she wants to. Which, like I said, to me it's interesting how the dynamic kind of changes once they have the child. Offred tells Miss Winifred that she's worried about Janine's well-being. Mrs. Winifred says, don't worry about it. It's just what happens sometimes with weaker women. And she says with her and Offred, they don't have that problem because they're both strong. And she stays to help Naomi with the baby, and Offred goes home with the driver Nick. And in the car, Nick is just driving, but Offred starts to ask him questions like, why did you say Offglen was dangerous? Ever since you said that, she's gone. And as she asks that question, she rolls up to the house, and the resistance, or under his eye, is there, which obviously scares her because she knows she's going to be interrogated, and all he tells her is to just tell the truth. So she starts to panic like anybody would do, and knows that if she just sticks to the facts, she'll be okay. So at first I thought she wasn't going to rat out Offglen because they start asking her questions and she's saying like no to most of them. And then all of a sudden because it was true, Offglen had never touched her in a sexual way. But when they started asking her if she knew that Offglen was a lesbian, then she goes ahead and just rats her out, which I was very shocked. Because I understand you're not supposed to trust anybody, but I thought they had a connection. And of course, because of this, Aunt Lydia shocked her with a rod for withholding information because they wanted to know why she didn't tell her mistress, I believe is the word she used, right away. And she just said it kind of slipped her mind. And then Aunt Lydia told her to remember her scripture, and she completes the scripture in full, which makes Aunt Lydia mad, so she hits her with that same rod with enough force to knock her down. And here comes Miss Winifred screaming like, oh, she's pregnant, don't do that. So of course Aunt Lydia starts, she gets a little upset because she didn't know, and her sole job is to make sure these women are safe and okay during their pregnancy. So Offred goes back upstairs, to kind of rest from being hit with the stick or the rod. And Nick comes to bring her an ice pack. Lo and behold, again, he's not supposed to be up there, breaking all kinds of rules. And then it's the next day, and of course, like I said, off red gets her period. June gets her period, and of course she is worried because she doesn't want to tell Miss Winifred, because she's figured out that the reason why Miss Winifred is giving her all this attention is because she assumes that she was pregnant, and by her telling her, it's not going to be a good look. So she goes downstairs to see Miss Winifred organizing a room for the baby that's not here yet. And as Miss Winifred gets really deep and emotional with her, she has to tell her, like, I'm not pregnant. And of course, Miss Winifred gets into a rage, and she drags her all the way back upstairs and basically throws her on the floor in her room and yells at her to not come out of the room until Miss Winifred tells her to come out. And of course, before she leaves, she tells her that things can get way worse for her, which obviously that's going to scare June, because the truth in both aspects, but she didn't tell the mistress right away when she found out the information. So now at this point, we're all worried about what could happen to June, because we know Offglen has been sent away. She went through her court thing. His partner ended up being a Martha, so both of them got sentenced, and they were sent away in a van. Offglen, Alexis, had to watch her lover be hung up on a crane, which I couldn't imagine that anyway, because I know she probably feels partially that it's her fault for that happening. And so her lover dies, and then she herself wakes up at the end of the episode in the hospital bed with this net over her private parts with a piece of, I guess you would call it cotton or bandaging, covering it. And Aunt Lydia comes in and says, oh, don't worry, you can still have children. It's just it's going to get rid of your negative thoughts, which obviously means she's not going to have a desire for women. But I don't understand how messing with your private parts is going to prevent you from having specific thoughts. So at this point, we're worried about everybody. We're worried about Offglen, and if she's ever going to get out of the hospital, or, you know, what's going to happen to her now. Is she going to go back to her old house? Is she going to get moved somewhere else? We're worried about Offred. We're trying to see, is she going to be sent to court too, or to jail, because she kind of withheld information from the resistance or under his eye. And with Janine or Offwarren, you know, we're kind of worried for her sanity in a way. To hopefully she doesn't get sent to the colonies to have, you know, further. Thank you guys for watching this video on these first 3 episodes. Stay tuned until next week when I talk about episode 4. And go ahead and leave comments at the bottom so we can continually keep discussing these first 3 episodes. You guys have a good day. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time.